today I wanted to give an update to the video I made that was getting things lined up, number 2, which was to create a foiled sentiment with a foiled edge to it. Okay, so you have to get your hot foil stamp for your sentiment and your die that you're going to cut this thing out with lined up so that you can foil and cut out and still have your sentiment nicely centered within its frame. So the previous video I was making a sentiment for a particular card, and I did get there in the end. Here's that card with its sentiment. I had to use a die with a narrower edge so that I could get enough pressure, more shims. I ended up heating the card to make sure there was absolutely no moisture in it. I discovered it. Foil was better on one side than the other, so about 6 attempts later that succeeded, but it's not usually that much trouble. So I thought I'd do it again today using the cardstock that I normally foil on and that doesn't normally give me these problems. So I'd said at the end of the video or in the comments that it's the cardstock that was the problem with this. So in this I hope to actually prove that to you. So without further ado, I'm going to tilt my camera down and show you what we're going to do today. Okay, so hopefully now you can see my work area here. So various bits and pieces on my work mess. I tend to work on a glass mat. So if you see strange patterns, it's the pattern on the glass mat. I've just got a white sheet of paper underneath it. So this is what we're making. So I have got my Go Press. It's sitting next to me. I'm going to take the platform off so I can bring it into the view of the camera, and I'm going to put on that my hot foil stamp. This one comes with the Go Press Deluxe as it's been sold by Create & Craft, but is available separately, or you might have other sentiments. So that goes directly onto the grey mat. I'm going to put it right in the middle. Okay, that sits there. I'm going to close the lid, put this back on the base unit to warm up. My unit is already warm, so that won't take very long, just to heat the hot foil stamp through. So now I've got my piece of card. In European card sizes, this is A6. It's 10.5 centimetres by 14.8. Or it's a quarter of a large sheet of card. So I'm going to need to put some foil on there. I'm going to use the same foil as I was using on that cream card. So there's no doubt that it was the card that was the problem. So I'm going to measure my foil. Cut it with my big sharp scissors. And then I'm going to take my foil to the surface of my card. Make sure there's no dirty marks or anything on it. So just place it in the middle there. And I'm going to put a piece of tape in the corners. Make sure the foil stays smoothed down. I do find it easier if the tape makes contact with the foil first and is then smoothed onto the card. Okay, that's my card taped down, my foil taped down to my card. So now rather than lay the foil onto the hot foil stamp and then put the card on top, I've got the two put together so that they don't move relative to each other. So now let's get the Go Press. Here's this. Open the lid. So So just figure out where the middle is in both directions. So that's about there and about there. So that can go there. Okay, and then I need some card shims to go on that. And then I can run it through my die cutting machine. Now I'm using really thin 250 GSM card. It's a good weight, but because it's super smooth, it's very thin. So I will be putting 3, maybe 4 shims on that to actually run it through my die cutting machine. So bear with me. Right, so I've just been and got some shims, and when I do foiling and it doesn't work, quite often I just keep the card so I can use it as a shim when I'm doing some other foiling. I think that was actually the attempt that I made in the video, and that really didn't come out in a way that was usable. So I'd left those over by my die cutting machine, so I'm now going to put those onto my goat press. Normally you'd do this all in one go, you wouldn't have left your shims in another room. So 1, 2, because that one's folded in half, that makes 4 layers of card on there. Close the lid. I'm just going to make sure that's at temperature, and then I'm going to roll it to my die cutting machine and then show you the next stage. So that's been through the die cutting machine. So take out the shims. And there's my foiling. And hopefully you can see that that looks like it's come out really smoothly foiled. Now it's really tempting to lift up the foil and have a look. But if you do that, we're going to have trouble lining up the frame to go around it. So I'm going to put that on one side for a moment. I'm going to put my goat press back on its base. No, I'm not actually. Before I do that, I need to take my hot foil stamp off of here using the wonderful tweezers, and I need to put on here my thin metal shim. Now this is only 0.3 millimeters thick. It's not the metal conversion plate that comes with the newer version of the Go Press that's been on sale for a few months in the UK. It's a very thin metal shim. It's 0.3 millimeters thick. This one's from Crafts 2, but you can get a very similar metal shim from Scrappy Cat Crafts on eBay, and Cottage Cuts do one that's also the same thickness, 0.3 millimeters. So that's what I use for the next stage. So, but underneath it I put a sheet of 300 GSM card, and I've cut it so it fits just inside the grey non-slip mat. Okay, and then I'm going to put my shim over the top, and then I'm going to put that on the base unit to warm up. And while that's warming up, I'm going to talk to you about the die I'm going to use to get the edge and to cut out the tack. So you'll notice this particular die, it doesn't really matter what brand you use, but this one's got its cutting edge in the middle of a broad frame, and there's no notches on the inside edges of the frame for lining up purposes or anything like that. So it's a nice smooth regular edge, so that I should be able to get a nice foil border. I'm not going to end up a border that thick because I'm going to cut it out, and my cut line will be halfway through that thick line, so it will come out like this. So back to my piece that I've foiled. Move my scissors out of the way so they're not in shot. So here's my foiling, and hopefully you can see on the camera where that is. I can see it when I lay it down to look at it. So let me turn it up this way around so I can see it. So I want to place my die so that the edge of the metalwork for the die clears the writing, the foiling for the text. Okay, and another thing is I want to make sure that the text doesn't look wonky. So I'm going to put my ruler across, not particularly under the text, but kind of where the midpoint is and in line with the bottom of the letters, but not touching them. And I can see that I've actually need to twist my die slightly, otherwise my text is going to look wonky. Check that again with my ruler. So I'm not really measuring, I'm just using it as a straight line to see whether or not that die is going to be straight across there. Okay, and then I need to tape down the die. You just need a couple of places so that it doesn't move when I'm actually putting it in the go press. Okay, so that's my die tape down. I'm going to bring the go press back in. It's now warmed up. So remember, I've got my thin metal plate with my sheet of white card underneath it. You can see it peeping out just there. So I'm going to put that on here, and then I'm also going to put a piece of scrap card on the top so that die's got something to bite into when I actually apply pressure. It'll save some of the wear and tear on the lid. Close the lid, put it back into warm. Okay, now I need to wait for that cardstock and foil to warm through. So while I'm doing that, let me just talk about hot foil stamps and dies. So this is a hot foil stamp, and hiding over here, that's a hot foil stamp. Now this is a Todo brand one. It's slightly thicker than the Couture Creations ones. Okay, and that's why you need to be able to put some card shims into the go press when you're using it, because they've actually taken account of the fact that they want you to be able to use things that are different brands and maybe slightly different thicknesses. And if it was all an exact fit, then you'd have to use exactly the right thickness of card and exactly the right thickness of hot foil stamps, and it'd all get rather, I think, limiting. You'd have to buy everything Couture. So they've actually put in that kind of wiggle room, but for the thickness. So by saying, okay, do this, but put in a couple of card shims depending on what your hot foil stamp is, or the thickness of the card that you're foiling onto. So those are hot foil stamps. This is a cutting die. You can see it's got ridges on it. Okay, I would never, ever, never, ever, ever put one of these face down on the grey non-slip area. I would only ever use these face up. You can foil from these, but you get all the thin cutting lines as a thin line on your foiling. Okay, whereas with this, which is exactly the same design but done in a hot foil stamp, you get the broader lines. It's a nicer effect, it shows off the foil better. Okay, I think my foiling is all up to temperature now, so I'm going to pause and go and run that through my die cutting machine. Okay, so that's now been through my die cutting machine. So let's see what we've got. Carefully pick it up because it is hot. Okay, now I've only taped, because I've only taped this in a couple of places, I can just wiggle the die up and have a look, see whether or not that looks like it's foiled. It looks like it's got a nice smooth foil line around there. So I'm going to move the base out of the way and take the die off. Okay. So I always like to peel the tape. Oh, that edge is free anyway. That one's going to peel away really easily. So just gently peel the tape away. I use Frog decorator's masking tape for delicate surfaces. Frog do a number of masking tapes for different things. It's the yellow one. That's the best way I can describe it. In the UK they sell it in the Range and in B&Q. I usually start peeling the tape from the side that's on the foil and peel it towards the card. Right, now we're ready for the big reveal. So the sentiment is foiled really nicely. There are a few imperfections around the edges, but each one, by the time I've die cut it, they don't really notice, or they just add a bit of rustic charm maybe. You get more perfect results if you use a die with a thinner edge. Let me just grab one. So the die I actually used on the card was this one, and this is from a set of tattered lace dies. As you can see, it's got a thin frame, so you get more pressure applied when you run it through your die cutting machine. There's more pressure on the foil, and then you're more likely to get a good result. Okay, but you get a thinner edge. That would give you... That one wasn't perfect. Actually, the edge of that one was quite good, but the sentiment didn't quite foil properly. But that's the kind of edge you'd get with a die like that. So, we need to position our die to cut this out. So, I'm going to turn this the right way around so that I can see what I'm doing. So you just put the die back over the top, cutting edge down, and you position it so that you can't see any of your foiling around the edge. Okay, and then you tape it down. I usually put tape in just a couple of places and then double check. Because quite often I pick it up and I look and I think, no, now I've looked at that angle, it's not in the right place. But actually that looks okay. So I'll add a bit more tape over this side. There we are. You don't want to put any tape over the area you foil because it can lift the foil off. So now I'm going to go and die cut that. Okay, so that's been through the die cutting machine. Cut out. Let's pop it out. So don't forget to take the die off your card. Okay. If you really want to have fun, if you want to, you can create yourself a foiled aperture using that technique. So here's my tag. Now I can just see I've got a bit of overfoiling down here. So I have here a sand eraser. Depending on your age, you might remember typewriters, and that people had ink rubbers for rubbing out when they made mistakes on those. It's a long time ago. But that was a sand eraser, and you can still get them. So I've got this one. It's made by Tombow, but if you do a search for sand eraser, you'll find one. They're not expensive, but they do lift foil off of card. I always take care to keep it flat, and because the foil is pressed into the card, then it doesn't take away the foil that's pressed in, just the overfoiling. So there we are, that's tidied that up. So that was what I was hoping to get on my cream card, my ivory card, but it just wouldn't happen. So, but that is to show the technique does work, and I've now got another topper sentiment to use on a card with a white background. Thanks for watching.